China's holding fresh military exercises around Taiwan in what it's calling a stern warning against the island democracy seeking independence. Here's the latest from Sky News UK.
Once again, tension is high in the Taiwan Strait. China launching massive military exercises. Its army, navy and rocket forces encircling the self-governed island, simulating a blockade and drilling down on Taiwan's ports. China calls it a stern warning, and its Ministry of Foreign Affairs insisted it's a domestic issue.
I can tell you that Taiwan independence is incompatible with peace in the Taiwan Straits, and provocations by the forces of Taiwan independence will be rejected.
China's drills come only a few days after this, Taiwan's National Day celebrations. During a speech, the island's president, Lai Ching-te, said China has no right to represent Taiwan.
Yeah, it's a worrying situation. Let's get a readout on it from former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer.
Well, what the Chinese in Beijing are doing is threatening the regime in Taiwan. In particular, they dislike the president there and some of the language that the president uses, which they associate with independence for Taiwan. So that's their concern, and that's why they're mounting these military exercises. But however, I don't think they're on the threshold of invading Taiwan. I don't think they would dare do that and run the risk of a huge major war, in particular with the United States. So yeah, it has to be seen in the context of their attitude to the new president of Taiwan.
Yeah, and it's always a fraught situation with so many military assets on the water, and in intimidating situations there's always the potential for accidents, but it is deeply worrying. And it comes, of course, at a time when there's so much focus on China and Xi Jinping and what his game plan is. And Australia's ambassador to the US, of course, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, a man you know well, he's published a new book on Xi Jinping. It is based on his thesis, and it describes Xi Jinping as a threat to the global order. Is this useful for an Australian ambassador to be out there so boldly on such a major international issue? Shouldn't that be left to our Prime Minister and Foreign Minister?
Well, I think it is useful, actually. He did a PhD at Oxford University a little while ago, and his PhD was on Xi Jinping. I know the supervisor of his PhD, and he told me that it was a very good piece of work, and now he's converted it into a book. Actually, to be fair, I don't really see a problem with that, because having read just summaries in newspapers of what the book says, it seems to me pretty much on the money, focusing on Xi Jinping being a very different leader from his predecessors, much more Marxist-Leninist, more Maoist, if you like, than his immediate predecessors, having swung the country hard to the left economically and becoming a very aggressive nationalist. I mean, I think all of that analysis is completely right. So, I mean, it might be a little heterodoxical, because I don't like Kevin Rudd very much, but I think this is a good piece of work, and it will enhance his status in Washington, being an expert on China.
Well, absolutely. We understand why that's good for him. And by the sounds of it, I haven't read his thesis, but by the sounds of it, as you're saying, it's strong and robust on China in a way that Australia should be. But it might embarrass the Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong. But I suppose on the good side, it might encourage them to be stronger, to have more spine when it comes to dealing with China.
Well, I think what we've realised with Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong is they have no idea about foreign policy. Their only interest is domestic politics, and they use foreign policy as a tool to advance their domestic political campaigns, which are mainly against the Greens. But Kevin Rudd is making a serious point about China and the aggression of China and the dangers of China. And I mean, if Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese are going to spend a bit of time by the beach, and I gather Albanese is going to spend a lot of time at the beach, if he's going to do that, he might like to read Kevin Rudd's 600-page book.
Yes, while you're at Copacabana, read the Kevin Rudd's, his good mate Kevin Rudd's book on China. Let's go to the Middle East and the ongoing strife there, and the fact that the United States now has effectively warned Israel that unless it improves the humanitarian access and assistance in Gaza, the US could actually withdraw some military support. Here's the warning from the US.
What we have seen over the past few months is that the level of humanitarian assistance has not been sustained. In fact, it has fallen by over 50% from where it was at its peak. So the Secretary, along with Secretary Austin, thought it was appropriate to make clear to the government of Israel that there are changes that they need to make again to see that the level of assistance making it into Gaza comes back up from the very, very low levels that it is at today.
Now, of course, Israel's copping criticism from the UN and the EU over what's happening in southern Lebanon. We're still waiting to see what Israel will do in terms of a counterattack to Iran. So how much of a blow is this coming from the US right now?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it's tied up with something that's happening in the US 3 weeks from now, and that is the election. Not just the presidential election, but the Senate and congressional elections as well, which are all very tight. And so the Democrats are worried about Michigan. Michigan has started to drift towards Trump, and Michigan has a very large number of Muslim voters. So I suspect it's all tied up with that. After all, this announcement has been made at the same time as the US has also announced it's delivering the most sophisticated anti-missile systems to Israel, and they're going to send some soldiers to help to operate those missile systems. So I don't think there's anything more to it than just a little bit of politics.
Fascinating stuff. And of course, yeah, the deadline extends beyond the US election timeframe, as you point out. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. Always great to catch up.
It's a pleasure, Chris.